So for today, do I have, may you please state your name and
Yep.
your job title?
Yep, I'm Senior Constable Matt Columbus. My registered number is 14473 from Calliope Police Station.
And do I have your consent to interview you today?
Yes.
Awesome. Alrighty, so how many car accidents have you responded to?
I've been a police officer for 20 years. How many have I responded to? I would talk probably hundreds.
Oh, wow.
So, so over the 20-year period. I guess I don't have an exact number or anything like that, but it'd have to be in the hundreds and stuff like that. Yeah.
What are your first thoughts when you get called and it's an accident? Like, what's your first thoughts?
My first thoughts are wondering what's occurred, and for us, it's a very clinical thing for us, being police, because we get detailed the job via our communications or via our iPad, and it gives very brief details. So whatever's been called in is then passed on to us, and then we start heading there, whatever priority, and then from there we're sort of assessing what's actually required for when we get there, so we can sort of get that ball rolling and stuff like that. So, but yeah, it's quite a clinical thing that we do. And I guess when it first comes to what my thoughts are is what we need, and how we can work and that type of thing. So.
Are you allowed, do you ever follow up with victims of a car crash? Like, ever check up on how they've done, or just...
Normally, depending on the severity of the car crash, because you can have a car crash which is just in the car park of a shopping centre, which is very minor with no injuries, or you can go all the way to the other end where it's a fatal car accident. So it just depends on the circumstances. Like, we try to, because we may not speak to the driver of a vehicle that's severely injured at the scene. It may be done later on. So what we do is we go in there and make sure that they're getting seen to, and the investigation side of the cause of is because of what's important is their safety, and getting them treated and stuff like that. And the investigation side of things can happen later on. So I guess the most important thing is people's safety and stuff, and getting their injuries treated and stuff like that.
So when you're at the scene, what information do you collect from the people involved, like insurance companies, names, numbers, like?
Yeah, all that, as well as I guess the circumstances of how it occurred and stuff like that. So, and it's from our point of view that. And we're obtaining details of any witnesses, and it's not just drivers, it could be other people that are there that saw it and stuff like that. So, or there's CCTV footage and the likes of that can sometimes pick it up.
I know for our accident, Mum was breathalyzed right away.
Yeah.
So a breathalyzer is mandatory, like depending on the severity, like if the person can do it, is it mandatory?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's definitely, that is the first what we do, and that is to rule out any alcohol involved. And as you can imagine, that's a high contributor of traffic accidents is people under the influence of liquor and stuff like that. So that's why there's that mandatory breath test that we do. And it depends. It may not. We just don't do it to everybody. If they're suffering significant injuries. Sometimes they don't have the ability to provide a breath test, so we look at other avenues and stuff like that of taking blood or the likes of that. So
does that change anything? Like if they do blow in, like over the limit, what does that change? Does it change your whole like mindset of what's happened, or
not really? Like because I treat everybody with dignity and respect, and it doesn't matter. Who it is, what the result is, I have a job to do, and I guess my primary role is to facilitate the management of the scene, which is cars and then people around, and then making sure that the fireys can get in, the ambos can get in unhindered. And from that, it doesn't change. It just possibly collates further information for the cause of the, and that's primarily is to establish what actually happened. And that's, and if somebody's under the influence of alcohol, that's probably a contributing factor.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah.
And what is the paperwork like associated with a car accident? Is there a lot to fill out depending on the severity of it?
Well, it's the same. See, what we do is, I don't know with your car accident what the officers did or anything like that. Did you see?
Well, there was one grabbed my phone to call my dad.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't know what they were talking about, but yeah.
Yeah. So what we normally do is make notes in our notebook, and that's details of who the driver is, the vehicles, and versions about what occurred. That then gets transferred later on to our computer system. So did you get given a QP number when you...
No, I did. Oh,
yeah.
I think it was the next day or that afternoon, maybe.
I'm not sure.
So it's a computer-generated number that we
Yeah.
data entry all the
It's a
information
report
into.
Oh, so that's how.
Yeah. So once we go to the scene, we then generate a report
And
from the,
send it.
and then it's on our database from there, and the insurance companies can get and Freedom of Information can get access to those reports. Only certain information within those reports. So, yeah.
So, are there any specific requirements for police, in particular, to be called to an accident? Like, is there, like, how much damage has been done or anything?
Yeah. So if there's any minor accidents, there's no requirement where there's no injuries and vehicles can be driven away.
Okay, so so
Yeah,
it
so
doesn't need
that-
to be interfered with anyone else. They can just
Exchange
Do it.
details,
Yep.
and then from there they can then leave. The only time that we get involved in car accident is if there's an element of somebody who's under the influence of liquor, that somebody's left the scene, and someone's injured, and vehicles have got to be towed away, or there's significant amount of damage to other property as well. So imagine if you went crashing into a shopping centre or something like that. So, but there's definitely no. It used to be a set amount of damage to the cars. That's now changed and stuff like that. So,
this is a bit of a weird question, but is there ever a good accident scenario, like where you show up and you're kind of relieved when you?
I think because the information we can get initially may be different to what's actually happening.
Yeah.
And if we have, because one of the worst jobs you can go to is an entrapment. Do you know what I mean by an entrapment?
Yeah, when they're stuck in the car.
Yeah, absolutely. So, because there's so many risks involved with that, and then we just can't physically get them out. So we have to wait on the fireys to turn up to actually get them out, and it's just a matter of managing their injuries and stuff like that being called to an entrapment, and then they're not entrapped. It is a good thing. Yeah. So
it kind of moves on to my next question: is what happens if you arrive before paramedics or the fight, like you first on scene, just kind of handle the situation, like?
Yeah, our primary focus if we're first on scene is patient care, and everything else can wait and we do that, and sometimes we can do that whilst the ambos turn up and they get set up, and then we continue to do that because sometimes they don't have a lot of ambos, and because there's only typically one ambo located in Calliope here. So they're potentially the first and they need another set of hands to help them. So that's why we're there as well. So yeah, and it's more of just, and we're not extra trained in relation to medical terms or anything like that. So we're just doing basic first aid.
Because I know pretty sure it was the ambulance ladies they were telling everyone, like yelling at everyone to get away from the car.
Yeah, yeah.
Because out we rolled and
We ended up on our side with the driver's side down,
Yeah,
and it was on like a bit of a curb.
yeah.
So it was the ambulance people that
Yeah,
were telling people to, and us even trying to get us, because they were worried that the car
Was going to tip
would have
over.
tipped back onto its wheels, and then that's putting other people at danger. So
Yeah, yeah.
they were the ones moving everyone away.
Yeah, yeah, and that's part of when I spoke before about the management of the scene and making sure that because you could imagine a car crash, maybe a truck or something like that with dangerous goods on board, and then near a school, and there's just so many other things that potentially can be impacted just from that car accident with the dangerous goods maybe imposing upon the school and stuff like that. It's just you've just got to assess, and our safety is important as well, making sure that we don't put ourselves at risk. And sometimes there's always an element of risk, but it's all about minimising that risk as much as possible.
And if someone else gets hurt, then it's a bigger job.
Yeah,
that you
yeah.
gotta-
Yeah, absolutely. So, because we don't want to see anybody get hurt because we can't change what's already happened. What we can control is what happens from there, and we don't want to see other people get hurt from what's already happened.
Yeah,
So,
because I know there was a man trying to get into our car to
Yeah.
turn it off, or I don't know what he was saying.
it was.
I don't know what he was trying to do, but
The
Yeah.
person that hit us actually was on top of our car
yeah.
trying to get me out, and I declined because I was a bit freaked out. But
Yeah.
Yeah, so there was people, and I suppose they see an accident and they just come running in and they try to help, but sometimes that's hindering.
I was pretty lucky. I had a off-duty nurse.
Yeah.
She was the first one.
And
to
that's
treat me,
usually
which was
pretty
good.
much the case. And a lot of times that we turn up, there's off-duty nurse, off-duty doctor,
We
or
had-
something already on site and stuff
We
like
had
that.
an off-duty nurse helping Lillian, and there was also a first or second year uni ambulance student as well. So we had pretty good first responders.
Yeah, and that's
lucky.
you sort of you don't do those type of roles without, you know what I mean, just driving past and going, oh, I'm not going to help there.
Yeah.
Like that's to me crazy.
Yeah, you gotta like
Yeah,
get
yeah.
into the mindset of it. Who is responsible for evidence collection from an accident?
Yeah, that's the police.
Yes.
Yeah, so
So is that just to what you said before? You take notes and do you take photos?
yeah, well, typically, depending on the severity again,
Yep.
if it's only a minor accident, that we may potentially just take photos on our iPad.
Yep.
If it's more serious, we would get our scenes of crime in to take photographs of the scene.
Okay.
And we also have a forensic crash unit. Their primary role is investigating crashes.
Like determining if like speed was like, do they do it at the scene? Like,
Yeah. So what they have is the forensic crash unit have surveyors, so they can survey the whole scene. They can survey, and you can tell a lot by skid marks and gouge marks, and you can find out just for example, if two cars have a head-on,